mentioned, that your brother is a big movie superstar. You never thought of going down that road or explore that as an option?
I think it's a good description that he is an accidental actor, an unlikely actor, in much the same way that I like to describe myself today, all these years later, as an accidental matchmaker, an unlikely matchmaker. I say this with a lot of love. He was the good-looking one in the family.
Yeah, I don't think many people are going to disagree with you on that. Before, some of those decisions that he has made, especially on the financial front, is not something that I agree with.
I registered the parent company of Jodi365.com. So I founded and run Jodi365.com.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Desi Fire Podcast. Today, we have entrepreneur with us, Dr. Anil Kumar. He has had an illustrious career, went to IIT, Chicago Booth School of Finance, and done a large number of things. Some of those decisions I've had this conversation with him before. Some of those decisions that he has made, especially on the financial front, is not something that I agree with. It could be because I don't have the sort of guts that he has to take those calls, or it could be because I'm more rational than he is and he's taking those irrational calls. And I'll let you guys decide whether it's a glory game or these were some irrational decisions. And we'll start with some of the rational decisions that Dr. Anil made along the way. The first one that I'd like to start with is, sir, you went to IIT Madras, if I'm not wrong, back in the 80s. So, how did that come about?
90s, yeah.
90s.
Before that, I can tell you, Ravi, I've gone on many an interview, I've gone on many a podcast show. This is a show that I've been looking forward to from the time that we connected in recent weeks, for the kind of conversations that you have. And I think there's a lot of value that you add by engaging with people on matters relating to finance. And I'd love to share the kind of perspective that you probably wouldn't hear of or read of in the startup ecosystem. So good to connect with you, Ravi. Good to connect with your audience. Your question was how IIT came about, right? Yeah, so here I am back in my hometown after having gone to the US 3 decades ago, going about my life and career there. So my dream growing up in Chennai was to get into IIT. And there have been some early influences. I was a bright kid, good at school, good at academics. And there were a couple of influences in the family, older cousins who had gone into engineering. And growing up in the 80s, I'm 53, so that people can get a better sense of how times may have changed. Computers were happening then. We're talking late 80s. I was good at math, so I chose the engineering track. And then my dream was, what is this thing called IIT? It was a beautiful moment for me to get to visit the campus when I was probably 15. And I thought that wouldn't it be great to go through the portals of this wonderful campus. So while finishing high school, my dream was simply IIT or nothing. Worked hard to get in, took me 2 attempts, and I can talk about, foolish, risky decisions even then. But it was a dream for me, and I'm glad that I could realize that dream of getting into IIT.
So back in those days, so we are talking about, late 80s, early 90s.
That's right.
Was there a coaching ecosystem at that point of time? Or like today, it's a whole different ball game. Even by, let's say, the late 90s or the early 2000s, Kota had become a hub. At least in North India, it had become a hub. So what was the situation like when you were preparing?
And so it's fascinating. There was this kind of factory system already, maybe not as entrenched then as it is today, because I don't think Kota had come on the scene. I finished school in 89 at 16. I remember reading the newspapers, and we had a newspaper culture then. I would come across this reference to JEE, and I used to wonder, what is this thing called JEE? Keep in mind that while I had a couple of older cousins whom I give credit to for the early influence, but you had a brilliant tutorials out of Chennai, and you had an Agarwal classes out of Mumbai. Brilliant was mainly in-person coaching based, and Agarwal classes used to send these booklets, these physical booklets in the mail. I was not a fan of this kind of a classroom factory model. I thought it was too commercial for my taste. And I'm glad that I had the network, asked around, was resourceful, got some smart referrals to retired college professors, or some of whom may have even been young enough to still be teaching to have a day job, but would offer these classes on the side. So I took not one on one, I took more intimate coaching lessons, tuition classes from a professor in math, a professor for chemistry, a professor for physics. These were really good teachers, and I'm grateful that I learned much from them. To stick to the point though, there were these 5 IITs, and I credit this math professor, bless his soul, retired math professor, whose teaching is what I credit to my cracking not just IIT, but getting into ISI Calcutta, the Indian Statistical Institute. I'm more proud of cracking that process than IIT to this day. There were some 5,000 applicants for 120 who called to an interview on campus, and of those 120, 30 get admitted after a grueling 2-round interview process, which I also went through in Calcutta. So we're talking 1990, but that's my IIT story. Yeah.
Fair. So you talked about your cousins playing a role in you deciding going down that engineering road.
Mm-hmm.
But you also mentioned, that your brother is a big movie superstar. You never thought of going down that road or explore that as an option?
Yeah. One of my 2 brothers. I have 2 elder brothers. The middle one is the actor. Why would I think about it? Even he didn't think about it. So I
Okay.
think it's a good description that he is an accidental actor, an unlikely actor, in much the same way that I like to describe myself today, all these years later, as an accidental matchmaker, an unlikely matchmaker. No, and here, but though, I'm glad you bring this up. I don't know about your audience, but if there are young professionals, men and women listening in, and their parents also, if you're in your late teens, early 20s, I can tell you that one of the things that I'm grateful for is the upbringing that my brothers and I knew. Neither of my parents attended college, and yet they valued education, and they gave us a very good schooling. One of what was then one of the best schools in Chennai. It was an environment of a lot of trust, as in, hey, it's your life, do as you please. If you want to smoke, if you want to drink, we would rather that you smoked in our presence, have a drink at home, or here, light up a cigarette at home, because it would hurt us if we were to hear someone coming and telling us, hey, take a look at your sons, look at what they're doing. To the extent that I can invoke this line from the Spider-Man series, with great power comes great responsibility. I say that with great trust comes great responsibility. So it may have had a factor in maybe imbibing some conscientiousness, which I think is a good thing to have to nurture in oneself for professional growth, for successful personal relationships, for even money matters. Did I sufficiently address your question? So Ajit himself, he didn't think that he'd be an actor. So I say this with a lot of love. He was the good-looking one in the family, and to the extent that
I don't think many people are going to disagree with you on that.
yeah, and to the extent that good-looking kid. In the father's side of the family, a nickname for him, a term of endearment, was arrogant, handsome, good-looking one. And his passion, he flunked. So here, I was the kid who would do good at who was good at studies. He was the one who would get grief from our teachers. And imagine how embarrassing, even to me, for him to get grief from teachers. Can't you be like your younger brother? Can't you get it right? I thought, how cruel, huh? The kind of things that used to fly a generation ago won't fly these days. But yes, he flunked out of high school. Imagine that. But then he was well-rounded. He had other interests, very good at extracurricular activities. It's in National Cadet Corps, aero modeling, in sports, outgoing. And it humbled me that there was this school teacher. I met her when I was in college, asked upon her about in the city, and I said, hey, would you remember me? Her? And I thought she would remember me for the kid who was good in her classes. And she said, hey, aren't you Ajit's brother? I thought, wow, he would get so much grief, but he was still able to make an impact on the people that he interacted with. So there were so many of the folks in our family and friends network would say, hey, why don't you get into modeling? Good looking guy, right? So yeah, he got into modeling, would do these print ads, maybe even started getting into TV ads. His modeling portfolio got noticed by an up and coming film director then who was looking for a pair of new faces for a love story. He was invited for a screen test, attended it as a picnic, and got his break in the industry. And it's for his, I mean, people get breaks. I'm proud of him for how he has persevered. And that's a tough industry. Anybody who's been in the craft for a couple of decades and is a master of their domain can but respect them from different walks of life. But feel free, your show, take it wherever you see fit for your audience.
Sure. So I would like to now move on to the money part of things, especially when it comes to financing your education abroad. Now, today things are very different, but let's say if you go back a couple of decades, when you did your MBA from Chicago Booth, I am assuming it would have been an expensive course. So this is late 2000s, what we are talking about for the
2006.
Chicago MBA?
2006.
2006.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll still be, an expensive affair. And by that point of time, I believe looking at your profile that you're doing a PhD probably in the US working as a research assistant of some sort, it would have been an expensive affair. While I understand that your parents provided a lot, but financing a US education, I don't really think that part came from them.
Sure.
So how were you able to finance that entire thing in 2006?
Sure.
By when you hadn't really made that much money, at least from your LinkedIn profile, you didn't have any so you were not working in Microsoft in 2001 that your ESOPs would have ballooned and you wouldn't be able to finance that.
Good question to ask. And I'm glad that I at least have the presence to recognize that this may be of interest to many of your community members who may be MBA aspirants. Now, it would have been a lot more challenging if I were a typical MBA aspirant, which I was not. And I will come to the MBA financing part, but I didn't want to gloss over the fact that even financing my master's and PhD was not a piece of cake. While I'd known a comfortable childhood, we had some financial chatkas, shocks in my family. I'm someone you would describe as a mature MBA candidate because 6 years after my PhD at 33 is when, to use an Hindi expression, ek bhoot chad gaya tha. And so I'd been working full time for 6 years and I didn't have enough saved up to fund my entire MBA. And the MBA program that I chose was in Chicago, whereas I was living and working in Seattle. The program fees then, tuition alone, was about $90,000 for the full-time equivalent of an MBA. What I did smartly a few years earlier came to the rescue and helped me fund my program. So 3 years into full-time work, which I began at 27, rates in the US were low. House prices were within reach. I'd been renting and living by myself in a flat. More so given the choices that I made, I went into marine consulting, engineering consulting for the marine industry. Globally renowned firm, people outside the industry would not have known of, the Gloucester Associates. It had been around for almost 50 years at the time when I joined them in the year 2000 peaks. So I wasn't making the kind of pay, let alone somebody making in big tech would make. And I would commonly get asked, Indian, techie, Seattle, oh, you work at Microsoft. And I loved short-circuiting people's brain by saying, no, I'm a computational hydrodynamicist. I work at a marine consulting firm. And at the time of applying for an MBA, my salary was still only in the high 5 digits. And I remember being bummed. So if there are young folks listening, let me make eye contact by looking at the lens consciously. Comparison is a thief of joy. And I would think about, look at my peers, they are doing so much better and I'm not earning as much. But fortunately for me, wealth was not something that drove me. While living and working in Seattle on this full-time job, I'm glad that I had a lot more time for causes that were dear to me. So I took on volunteer and then leadership roles in a couple of organizations, animal welfare and environmental NGOs. I went on to serve on the board of the umbrella organization, the international board of one of them, while leading the Seattle chapter. So effectively, I was working 2 jobs, but only one full-time day job that paid the bills. And it was mild consolation that at that time, considering the additional perks, including being invited to be an owner in the company, I just crossed 100K in terms of CTC overall, but still not enough to fund my MBA education. But the good thing that I did was going about building the house as resourcefully as I did, knowing that a house would appreciate better over the long term than a flat, than a condo. And not only that, by the time my house is done, given all the sweat and toil into building this house smartly, it would be worth a lot more than it would cost me to build, which is why builders they buy a plot of land and build and they sell at a profit, right? I could have had the house done beyond the $235,000 purchase, getting a loan to finance the construction phase of the new house. I could have had it done for $450,000 in all. But since it was a house of my own, I didn't splurge on the specifications. I built a home that I was really proud of, put a lot of heart into it, the kind of heart that I put into building Jodi365. And it would have cost me about $475,000 overall, closer to 475 than $450,000. And I knew instantly that the ready house would be worth $600,000 on the market if somebody were buying that house. So I had $125,000 of equity already in the house. And 3 years later, the house was ready 2004, a couple of years later. And when I thought about how to fund my education, I thought I could take a home equity loan because the house was worth something. Go take a loan against your house. But I didn't want to take an equity loan, one chunk, and why should I start paying interest? Again, smart thinking. Why should I pay interest on money that I don't need? Instead, I opened up a home equity line of credit for up to $160,000, and interest rates were cheap then. With the idea that this line of credit was open and I could tap that, dip into it as and when I needed to make payments, tuition payments quarter by quarter when the bills would come. And given that it was a weekend MBA, which required me to fly, imagine a round trip, Seattle, Seattle back. There was also travel and staying at a downtown hotel. I thought that it would cost me about $150,000. So I took a line of credit for up to $160,000.
Close to the end of your MBA or during your MBA, you started your current business.
That's right.
And it has been close to 17 odd years now.
That's right.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what is it that your company does? Why did you start it? What was the need that you were trying to solve, and how much of the problem has been solved over the years?
Sure. Oh, thanks for asking. Yeah. So how did this come about, right? March of 2009. Here we are, March of 2026, 17 years ago, this March, I registered the parent company of Jodi365.com. So I founded and run Jodi365.com, a premium matchmaking platform and service for well-educated, accomplished singles and respectable families who have high intent, who want to find the right partner at a pace that makes sense for them, without having to go through the exhausting process of spending who knows how many hours a week and dealing with these online matrimonial apps and dating apps. It's a purely personalized service. Our USP is that we do the searching, we do the screening, we do the curating, going back and forth, and present these handpicked matches to discerning clients, discerning singles, and their invested families. We tactfully, thoughtfully exchange relevant information that somebody may be too polite to ask. We spare them the discomfort of fielding outright insensitive questions. This idea came to me in the home stretch of my MBA at Booth. And optionally over the previous year, in the second half of my MBA especially, I was exploring different opportunities, different business ideas, more so since I was fully immersed in the program, doing school full-time for the second half. The opportunity that most excited me, the challenge that most motivated me, was related to this unsolved problem for myself, which I'd known for the previous decade, having been single still. Because for the previous decade, from my mid-20s until my mid-30s then, I was not only open to finding a life partner, but proactively looking for someone for myself. I thought that I'd found my life partner in my mid-20s, that she was the one I was going to marry, I was the one she was going to marry, sweetheart from the American South. My mother even sent token gold earrings to her, the third daughter-in-law to be. But what do you do? In a couple of years, we had broken up. And I say that it was harder for me because I was the breakupee, not the breakuper. I took my time to lick my wounds, make peace with the breakup, gather the courage to risk giving my heart to somebody again, while wading through the jungle. And in my case, the net had already come on in the mid-90s. You had Web 1.0 versions of these matchmaking sites. You name it, I would have tried. In that decade, I would have tried just about every well-known matrimonial site or even US-style dating sites and got sick and tired of every one of them. And I took stock of the fact that for somebody like me, well-educated with professional aspirations and not enough bandwidth to put oneself out there, not into the bar hopping, night clubbing routine, where does one run into a potential partner? More so when the kind of preferences that I had were so discerning, so limiting, unlikely to find somebody in the course of everyday life. Maybe I could do a better job than these bozos. So again, this backdrop, I thought, why not a platform that appealed to the young generation, but without antagonizing the older set, as a dating site or app would. Apps had not come on the scene yet, but as a dating site would. So the mantra was, find the right partner at your own pace. Jodi365 came to me. Not a matrimony 365, not a dating 365, but as a smart, visible hybrid between the traditional and the modern for changing times. So I recognize the opportunity for this kind of a differentiated matchmaking platform and service for a changing world, especially changing India, while catering to Indians worldwide. We say conceived in Chicago, created in Chennai, catering to quality Indian singles worldwide. And we've stayed true to that positioning of helping to find the right partner at your own pace, because some may be ready for marriage in the near term within months of settling on a match that they've come to know through the platform. Some others may have long term intent but may not be comfortable with a marriage right away. They may be okay with an engagement and knowing that over a courtship period they'll get more confidence in their decision. Whereas some others, even if they may be feeling more pressure being older, may have burned their fingers and may want to get to know somebody as friends first. So that has been one of the foundational theses of Jodi365. Find the right partner at your own pace. So for the first few years, I shuttled between Chicago and Chennai, setting up the subsidiary here, being the team, being the platform, and going about the operations also over here. Pre-COVID, we were all out of our Chennai headquarters. Post-COVID, we became a remote culture with teammates working from cities and towns across the country.
Can you tell us a little bit about, say, for example, right now I am working on the AI company Handa Uncle, and I sometimes wonder that what exactly is the right route to choose, whether it's going the VC route or the bootstrap route. So, because my previous business was completely bootstrapped, it didn't require enough capital, to be really honest.
Okay.
The last business that I ran.
Okay.
So it was possible to be bootstrapped. The current business, the Handa Uncle bit, sometimes I get confused that can it be run, is the bootstrap model better? Is the VC model better?
Multiple thoughts here. First, I like the brand. I like the term Handa Uncle, sweet. Because look at me, as somebody who has more salt, increasingly more salt than pepper, I get called uncle by young professionals. Good luck with your own product, your own platform, your own service. More power to you. More power to all you entrepreneurs out there. The other thought is that look at this. This is the case that I was making. I have so much more experience and so many more informed perspectives to offer today, a decade and a half later, than I did in my mid 30s if I'd gone on to be a VC then. So, the short answer to your question is what do I think of what route? And I love this practiced answer from grad school days. It depends. If you're looking to build a high growth business at scale, typically it calls for resources, and sometimes it might involve competing, outspending other scrappy competitors, and it might require a lot. I don't know the business exactly, but generally I'll say this: one can build and build and build. My guidance to budding entrepreneurs would be build something as quickly as you can and get it out there as quickly as you can, so that you can learn by doing. I say this, and I'm glad about this, to the extent that you can control your own destiny. The best kind of fundraising is fundraising from customers. The best kind of fundraising. If you can make money from pre-sales, nothing like it. If you can get money from early adopters, nothing like it. Because what better way than somebody's voting with their wallet? You get to close on a deal round very quickly. Such a good discussion to have, so much value. And I can tell you, my business should have died multiple times over the course of previous 15 plus years. It's for good reason that they say that startups shut down not when they run out of money. Of course, it needs money to survive. It runs out when the founder runs out of energy. And there have been times when I have questioned how deep are my reserves? How deep are my emotional reserves? And I have been proud of what a strong stomach I've had. I paid a price for the journey that I've been on. And I continue to pay a price for the journey that I've been on. But we make choices in life. At least I'm privileged enough to have been able to make some choices.
So I guess that brings us towards the close of today's extremely insightful conversation with Dr. Anil. But before we let him go, I have three final questions for you. A, what is one book that you recommend reading to any budding entrepreneur? B, what is the biggest personal finance mistake that you have made in your journey? And C, what is the best financial decision that you have taken in your financial journey?
There are enough books on the mechanics of entrepreneurship, startups. In fact, if I turn to my bookshelf, and I can even tell you some of the books over here, the Lean Startup, there are enough of these startup books. You may benefit from reading up biographies of entrepreneurs, but I think this is a good recommendation. The Alchemist. That I think is a beautiful book for entrepreneurs because of the underlying message. Yeah. The mind gravitates in the direction of its dominant thoughts. And when you want something with all heart, the universe will find a way to conspire to make it happen. This was beautifully echoed in this popular Shah Rukh Khan movie, Om Shanti. Om. And yet, I'd say, what an enduring message. And I think as entrepreneurs, you need to believe. You really need to believe. It may be mumbo jumbo, but there'll be enough times when you'll have doubts. Sometimes you might want to get some good counsel, but you got to find the balance between pivoting, staying the course, but ultimately you got to believe. I'll tell you, I see this as my responsibility as an entrepreneur. Number one, vision, strategy. In which direction am I sailing? And taking my team with me. Number two, making sure, and not in any particular order, making sure that money doesn't run out. There's always cash in the bank. And number three, building a team that can build the organization with you. So staying hands-on and building the right people, a good team with the right people. And number four, I'll say, is chief people officer, a cheerleader, morale. And how can that happen if you aren't positive, if you aren't able to inspire people to believe in what you're doing? So I stick with Alchemist, no matter how much others may have been amplifying that message, because it is an enduring message. Yeah. If you want something with all your heart, you must conspire to make it happen.
What do you think is the biggest personal finance mistake that you have made managing your money?
Well, it may be a mistake that I'm living with. I've been all in on my venture. In financing this business, in the early years, I tapped into my remaining savings. I wiped out my pension plan. The equivalent of a provident fund in India is the private 1K account in the US. And I made a tidy profit from an angel investment that I got to exit from, something that I co-invested in along with when I was with Hyde Park Angels. I sold my house in Seattle for good profit, almost $400,000 after taxes, a couple of crores easy or more. It was supposed to go into investing in building a house along with my ex-wife, for better or worse, and it posed a lot of strain. The path that I've been on posed a lot of strain on my marriage. But you don't learn from success, you learn from failures. And I may be the odd case where I should have died a dozen deaths and I'm still standing and I have a successful business today.
And the counter to that would be, what's the best personal finance decision that you have taken?
From an early age, being mindful about not spending too much. Live within your means. Spend less than you make. Basic common sense. Basic finance. See, too many of us are spending too much money buying things that we don't need to impress people we don't know or who don't care. For what? And I can say this has been a personal ethic, family upbringing. My dad was a flashy personality. Bless his spirit, bless his soul. My mom's been the frugal one. So I say that I have half Sindhi in me. I'm frugal, and I think this has served me well. I'm very frugal. Yeah.
See, I don't really, to be honest, believe in the idea of spending too little or spending too much. Spending right is important. And there is this brilliant new book by Morgan Housel which has come out, and I'll suggest that all listeners should give it a try. It's called The Art of Spending Money, which covers that, it's where you put in that 100 rupees that matters a lot more than whether you're spending 100 rupees or 1,000 rupees or 10 rupees. Thank you, sir, for coming to the show. Thank you for taking out the time. Before we close, any concluding remarks?
Thank you for having me. And I can tell you, I've been on many podcasts, and I like that this is so specialized on something that is so important. More people need to be talking about this because money doesn't make one happy, I think. The absence of money can cause avoidable problems. So, in just the same way that I say profit is not a dirty word, wanting to be comfortable materially is not a sin. Yeah. What one does with money is a different matter, but maybe conversation for Ravi to have with somebody else, maybe a philanthropist. But thanks again, Ravi, for having me.
We hope to do that soon. Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming to the show. And thank you, everyone, for watching the entire episode. I hope you liked what we have put out here. Please remember to like the video as well and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.